Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm that blind lady and today I have something new for you. I have this channel's first true crime video and I'm excited to announce that it is the case of Rita Bouchard, my city's oldest cold case. Before we get started, please hit that subscribe button. It helps this channel grow and it keeps you informed of any new videos and any changes to my channel. I really appreciate it, so thank you so much. On November 29th, 1929, Rita Bouchard was born. By age 8, her father had passed away of tuberculosis, and by age 16, her mother was hospitalized at Wallen Pond Sanatorium in Cranston, Rhode Island, with the same condition. This forced Rita and her siblings to live in North Providence with her aunt and uncle. To help with bills, Rita began a job working as a mill worker at Rhode Island Fabric Company located in Pawtucket. On January 31st, 1947, Rita arrived late for her 3 p.m. shift. 2 hours into her shift, she reached out to her boss and asked if she could leave early as she wasn't feeling well. She stated she wanted to see a doctor before the weekend began, and she also wanted to see her mother at the sanatorium. Her boss, however, thought she had a last-minute date, as her clothing seemed a little too dressy for those two occasions. This was the last confirmed sighting of Rita Bouchard. On February 1st, 1947, a man named Joseph Curry was walking through Slater Park in an area known as Lover's Lane. Today, this area is known as 10 Mile River Greenway. He thought he spotted an odd boulder, but as he got closer, he realized it wasn't a boulder. It was actually the mangled body of a woman dried to the ground in her own blood. Curry immediately reached out to the police, and though the police chief was on vacation in Florida, the chief inspector and the medical examiner arrived on site promptly. The medical examiner was able to determine the unidentified woman had been stabbed 30 times, with a majority of those wounds being concentrated on her back. Her throat had also been cut. This wound alone would have caused her death. Despite the extensive wounds, the woman only had 3 holes on her jacket. Although the attack was extremely vicious, the woman had not been sexually assaulted. Robbery was not believed to have been the motive either, as the woman still had her golden wristwatch on. Word quickly spread of this brutal slaying, as things like this did not happen in Rhode Island or Pawtucket. Things like this were for the big city, like New York. Police released details to the media in hopes that somebody would recognize the clothing Jane Doe wore and would come forward. When Rita's aunt and uncle heard the news on the radio, they knew immediately it was their niece and reached out to police. Rita's aunt questioned police whether her glasses and handbag were found, but police did not find these items on the scene. Rita's aunt gave police the name of her ex-boyfriend, Charles Charlie Andrews Jr. Charles Charlie Andrews Jr. was born in New Bedford, the oldest of his family. When he was a boy, they relocated to the east side of Providence. Charlie eventually graduated from Hope High School and later went on to serve as a Korean War Army vet. After graduating from Brown University, Andrews went on to open his own environmental engineering firm and stayed in the area until his retirement and later death in 2011. Police decided to interrogate Charlie, and when they confronted him about the breakup, he admitted that he was very unhappy with Rita. He stated he felt blindsided, as if the breakup came out of nowhere. But he also mentioned that was the last day he had seen Rita. Charlie's alibi for the day Rita was murdered was that he went to dinner with his mother, later going home to go to bed, as he had to be up early the next morning to pick up his father from the train station in Attleboro. Police accepted this alibi when his mother confirmed, and that was the end of the interrogation of Charlie Andrews. Being back to square one, police started to theorize perhaps the perpetrator could be a woman. Maybe Rita had an ex-boyfriend whose girlfriend was jealous and came across Rita in Slater Park that night. However, police dismissed this theory when no woman could be connected to an ex-boyfriend and Rita. It was at this time police decided to put together a timeline of Rita's last known whereabouts. This led police to her last confirmed sighting, which was at the Rhode Island Fabric Company on January 31st, the day that Rita left work early. A co-worker of Rita's, Armando Lemos, claimed that he had a double date scheduled with her for the following day, February 2nd. This double date was supposed to be between Lemos, Rita, Rita's little sister Mildred, and an unnamed male. There is no further mention of this unnamed male, except for in a Boston Globe article from February 3rd, 1947, that mentions when Lemos arrived to Rita's aunt and uncle's home to pick Rita up, he was unaware of the fact that she had been murdered, yet the unnamed male did not arrive for the scheduled date. Rita's self-proclaimed best friend, Teresa Pattinaud, reached out to police and let them know of a 35-year-old man with a woman's portrait tattooed on his forearm, and claimed that Rita disclosed she was afraid of this man. The brother of Teresa, Eugene Raymond Pattinaud, was also questioned in connection to Rita's murder, but he claimed to have no information. 2 bus drivers came forward and claimed to have seen a woman resembling Rita that night. One stated he dropped her off at Main Street at 5:45 p.m., while the other claims she got into a vehicle in downtown Pawtucket around 6 p.m. Eugene Raymond Pattinaud was born May 5th, 1929, at the home of his parents in Pawtucket. He was said to have been a very quiet boy until he was afflicted with rheumatic fever at age 14. It was at this time his behavior seemed to change drastically. He refused to go to school, resulting in his illiteracy, and he also complained of headaches frequenting around the time of the full moon. Pattinaud also had a very strange habit of getting into taxis and asking them to just drive around. He would request that he be dropped off at the same place he was picked up, but just no particular destination in mind. The year before Rita's murder, Eugene, often called Raymond, was picked up by police for car theft and corruption of a minor, also known as statutory rape. He was sent to serve 9 months at the Sauconasset School for Boys in Cranston. In September of 1946, he was released to the custody of his parents. On January 31st, 1947, Raymond Pattinaud arrived at the Rhode Island Fabric Company to request his job back. For 2 weeks, Rita's case went cold, until one day, some kids playing in Slater Park stumbled across a knife. When the children brought the knife to their parents' attention, their parents called police immediately. The medical examiner was able to confirm that this knife matched the holes in Rita's jacket. The discovery of this knife prompted a new search of the area, but nothing of value was found. After 2 months, Rita's case remained cold, but in April of 1947, an interesting case came across Wadsworth's desk, leading him to investigate just a little further. Raymond Patnod was picked up for carnal knowledge of an 8-year-old. I believe you can guess what that is. While being held for this charge, Wadsworth decided to interrogate Patnod about Rita's murder. For 72 hours, he questioned him. Patnod claimed he was in downtown Pawtucket at the Capitol Theater watching a movie, but he was alone. After some time, Patnod relented, and he admitted that Rita came into the Capitol Theater just 5 minutes after he did. Patnod claimed Rita sat right near him, and the two began talking, but shortly left the theater and began walking up Main Street towards Collier Park, where they sat at a bench. Minutes later, a car approached from the North Providence direction and called to Rita by name. Rita got up and spoke to the driver briefly before returning to Patnod and asking if he wanted to join for a ride. Despite being hesitant, Patnod agreed. He couldn't tell police details about the driver or the vehicle, except the car had yellow license plates. The three drove towards Slater Park, heading down the Armistice Boulevard entrance. But upon arriving, Raymond decided he wanted to return to downtown and requested to be dropped off. They obliged and returned to the Capitol Theater, dropping off Raymond. Rita got out of the car and spoke briefly to Raymond before returning. Raymond says he could hear the driver ask if she wanted to return to the park or go home, to which Rita responded, "Go to the park." Raymond claims to have gone to a nearby cafe and got a coffee. While drinking his coffee, Raymond started to have some regret about not staying with Rita and decided to take the trolley to Slater Park. After being dropped off at the Armistice Boulevard entrance, Raymond found Rita by herself crying on a park bench. He approached her and asked, "What is wrong?" And that's when Rita slapped him in the face and walked away towards the nearest bus stop. Raymond said he followed Rita and asked her again, "What is wrong?" Again, she slapped him in the face, but this time also kneed him in the groin. Raymond says he can't remember what happened next, as his mind went blank, and suggests he could have killed her. He stated his next memory was waking up next to her lifeless body. Raymond claims he woke up, looked over, called out twice to Rita with no response, saw the knife, and left. He stated he walked to a trolley stop and took the trolley home. Police didn't believe his story, though. There were many inconsistencies, the biggest inconsistency being the timeline of the murder. The medical examiner stated Rita could not have been murdered any time before 6 a.m. the following morning, February 1st, while Raymond was claiming to have killed her before 10 p.m. January 31st. Police questioned Raymond whether his jacket was dirty once he woke up next to Rita. He stated there were only a few leaves, and they thought that this was impossible as the ground was quite muddy. Also, they believed he couldn't have taken the trolley without being noticed, as he surely would have been bloody. Police also believe that Raymond would have been too frail to have carried Rita to the area where she was found. He was only about 90 pounds. When asked why he had not brought this information up to police initially, Raymond explained that he began having dreams about a week after his interrogation, and it wasn't until a few days later he realized Rita was the woman he was killing in his dream. Pawtucket also described the way that Rita's body laid incorrectly, in addition to the description of the murder weapon. Pawtucket was not charged with Rita's murder, but he was sent to be evaluated at the Charles V. Chapin Hospital, a psychiatric hospital in Providence. Dr. Sidney Goldstein was the psychiatrist who evaluated him. He was also the former assistant superintendent at the Exeter School for the Feeble-Minded. It was noted at the beginning of Raymond's month-long stay that he was very cooperative and kind. Towards the middle, he began complaining of his migraines, and at the end, he began claiming he was being held prisoner. Dr. Goldstein decided that Raymond was a clinical moron. This term meant that he was very low IQ and only had the development of about a 12-year-old boy. Dr. Goldstein also stated he could not confirm or disprove the claims that Pawtucket had murdered Rita. And even though he was not charged with murder, Raymond was found guilty for his carnal knowledge count. Eventually, Pawtucket was released, and he married a fellow psychiatric patient. Rita's aunt and uncle moved from Rhode Island, and in 1956, the Providence Journal published the last piece about Rita's case. Nothing since has been mentioned. In 2019, Detective Sue Cormier of Pawtucket decided to reopen the case. That's when I heard about the cold case cards, and I came across this specific case. And some of my thoughts that I had while doing this research were, where did Rita's glasses and handbag go? They never found them. If Pawtucket was being truthful about the vehicle he saw, which states had yellow license plates at that time? I came across quite a few, so it would make it a bit difficult to narrow down. I also was very curious about the headaches around the full moon. I did a little research into this and found that a lot of people complain about this, despite there being no scientific evidence linking the two. It's thought that hormones can change around the time of the moon, which can then cause headaches. I just thought that was a little interesting. A fun fact that I found while doing this research was the diner that Raymond might have gotten coffee at was a place called Lovely's. It was a place called Lovely's Diner, and it was located on Main Street until 1966, when it was relocated to near McCoy Stadium, and it's now called the Right Spot Diner, which was actually the first place that I had eaten at when I moved here years ago. Another thing that I thought of was, how was Pawtucket able to bring the police to the location of Rita's body if he was not the person who committed the murder? It just seems kind of crazy to think that he would be able to bring them exactly to where she was found. He was just wrong in describing the way in which her body laid. I figured it was dark, so perhaps he just was wrong about that information. It obviously wasn't a robbery, because why would somebody rob her and then kill her and then dump her? It also seemed the amount of wounds she had, in addition to the throat being cut, that seemed very personal, so it does seem like somebody she knows. One of the interesting things about this case is there was a tree by Rita's body that had some fresh hatchet marks. And this tree has always been sort of an indicator as to where her body was found. It was thought perhaps the murderer had left those hatchet marks as like a way of knowing where she was and coming back and being able to, you know, reminisce about the situation. However, I'm not sure if those marks are from the murderer, because it just seems like the weapon wasn't correct, and just, I don't know, it just didn't seem that somebody would bring a hatchet and a knife but only use the knife on her and use the hatchet on the tree. I don't know. And the last thing that I had thought of was the newspaper that mentioned the unnamed male and why nothing further was ever brought up about that. And the man that supposedly Teresa Patinod had claimed Rita was afraid of. It just seems like there were other avenues that weren't explored as much, as well as Charlie Andrews, his alibi. But that I'm going to get into on the next section, which is theories. So in my mind, there are 7 possible theories for this case. The first theory is that Charlie Andrews Jr. committed the murder. Because he was the first suspect, she had just broke up with him. His alibi was really weak, in my opinion. His mom confirmed that he was sleeping. That didn't seem to be very strong, in my opinion. But there is no other evidence against him. He seemed to go on and have a normal life. He didn't move out of the area, you know, little things like that. Theory number 2 is that Eugene Raymond Patinod murdered her. He confessed. I mean, that's kind of a big thing, but he was very weak, so I'm not sure he would have been able to do it. However, he had charges of car theft, so maybe he stole a car and murdered her in the vehicle, and I don't know. It just seems there are many reasons for and against this theory, so let me know your opinions down below. Let's go on to theory 3. Theory 3 is that a jealous girlfriend of an ex-boyfriend committed the murder. And part of me says the thing that makes this likely is the fact that she was not sexually assaulted. It seems like if you're going to have a frenzied murder, that sort of assault kind of goes hand in hand. But if you're a woman and you're
CCF 00007 DD.
Sorry, my voiceover's going over. But if you're a woman and you're incapable of committing that sort of assault, then that makes sense. It just seemed unlikely to me. I mean, if you don't believe a 90-pound man could commit the murder, then why would you believe that a woman could commit it? I don't know. Theory 4 is that an ex-boyfriend, not Charlie and not Eugene, committed the murder. And there were other boyfriends that were mentioned, none by name, none specifically, but they were able to, I guess, clear a lot of these people. Theory 6 is that the unidentified man in the car murdered her. Obviously, if Raymond was being truthful, this unidentified man could be the suspect. However, it becomes a little weird with this one, because she was seen getting into a car by the bus driver. The bus driver knew Rita, so he knew it was her. It wasn't just a woman who looked like her. And then you have Eugene, who mentions a car and her getting into the car. So it seems like there's definitely a vehicle involved. Now it's just a matter of who was the driver of this vehicle, right? Theory 6 is that a complete stranger murdered her. Seems pretty unlikely. The odds of being murdered by just some random person are pretty low. They say actually more than half of female murder victims are killed by an ex-boyfriend, so that's another strike against Charlie and Eugene. However, you can't put it past, I suppose, especially considering it's still unsolved. You know, the odds of it being a random person, I guess, are pretty low, but I don't know. And my last theory, theory 7, is actually a pretty crazy one. My theory, allegedly, is that Armando Lemos murdered her. So as I was doing my research, I came across Armando's obituary, which had mentioned that he was a young husband. And in this article, the Boston Globe article that mentions the double date, it happened to say Armando's age was 20. So I kind of thought maybe Armando was going on this date, but he was already married. And perhaps Rita found out that he was married and was going to say something, and he murdered her to keep her from saying anything. It seems kind of out there, but I mean, it's possible, especially when you're putting anything together. Lemos left Rhode Island not too long after the murder. His wife, he and his wife moved to Connecticut, which isn't too far away from us, but it is kind of a little suspicious when you leave town after a murder, which is one of the reasons I didn't feel it was Charlie so much. He stuck around Rhode Island until he died. Eugene, there really wasn't much information about what happened after his after he was released from the Exeter School for the Feeble-Minded. So I apologize, from the Chapin Hospital. There isn't a lot that is mentioned about him. So I'd be curious to know. I was going to try and find the tree that was marked. However, there aren't any like definitive directions, so I'm going to just go to Slater Park and kind of look around and see and explore, and if I can find it, I will definitely update with pictures for sure. I also wanted to go to the cemetery where Rita is buried because it is not even a half a mile away from my house. I thought that would be very interesting. However, it is pouring rain. We're getting leftovers from Hurricane Elsa, so it seems unlikely that I will be able to go there. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will leave the number below for Pawtucket Police and the Rhode Island State Police, the tip line that they have set up for anything. If you have any information or any sort of tip that you think could help, please feel free to reach out. I'm sure that the Bouchard family would love some closure. There was an article, a news segment done by WPRI not too long ago with the surviving family, and they did mention how this still affects them. So I just wanted to let everyone know my thoughts are with them, and I really do hope that they can get some closure in this case. Thank you so much. Our next video is possibly going to be another crime video. I did find this very fun making. not so much recording. I had quite a stressful time recording this to make sure I got all the information in. But I did have a lot of fun finding the details, and especially with the fact that it was something so close to home. If you guys have any video suggestions, any cases you'd like me to cover, feel free to leave a comment below or email me at babblingbrook017@gmail.com, and that's Brooke with an E. Otherwise, have a great day, everyone. Don't forget to like this, share, subscribe. Have a great day.